Welcome to the Scrapbooking Inspiration Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Shannon, and today I have a very special episode for you. I've got a voice that will be familiar to many of you. Katie, the creative lady, is joining me today, and I'm excited to have her on the show. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks so much for having me on. It's fun to be back on a podcast.
Yes. Well, for many years, we have had the privilege of listening to you each week talking about scrapbooking and all kinds of fun things. And I guess the first thing is like introducing you. Many people will know you best as Katie the Scrapbook Lady, but you've had a bit of a rebrand.
I have, and I'll tell you, I really wrestled with that because I've been Katie the Scrapbook Lady for, 15 years. It actually started, it was probably more than that, but it started back in the early, about 1999, and I would host paper scrapbooking crops, and so it was really a fun thing to do, and somehow we jokingly got saying, well, I'm Katie, the Scrapbook Lady, and that really stuck. And then when I started my website a few years later, before there were blogs or anything, I named it Katie the Scrapbook Lady. And then as I became a blogger and entered the digital scrapbooking world, I stuck with that name. So I've been thinking about rebranding for a couple of years because I do have a couple of other projects I want to work on that don't really fit with the Katie the Scrapbook Lady brand. And so I decided everything that I'm doing, including scrapbooking, is being creative. And so I just really liked that idea. I liked the idea. Some people are afraid of the word scrapbooking, which is funny to me, but I can understand because they think, I have to be super crafty to scrapbook and I have to do all these things. But scrapbooking now really encompasses even like making photo books, very simple pages that are more just photos only sometimes. Sometimes they have supplies. And so I like the rebrand. I was worried I would lose fans or readers from it, but I haven't. Everyone's been really great about it. So
yeah, it's really fun, and your website is looking very fresh and beautiful these days.
Thank you.
So if people haven't met you before, we got a little bit of an insight. You were originally a paper scrapbooker and you've done all kinds of things over the years. Did you want to just tell us a little bit of a quick origin story of
sure,
how you got to be where you are?
Sure. So, as I was growing up, my mom took photos, and I think we put them into photo albums. I don't really remember, but when I was 14, a friend of mine brought this big, giant scrapbook to a party, and it was, this was in the 80s, so it was kind of a big one with sort of construction paper pages, and she used rubber cement to put the photos in, and I thought it was so fabulous. I wanted to do that. So my mom let me use a lot of our photos, and I started making my own scrapbooks, and I was pretty good about keeping them up to date until I went to college, and then, of course, that, took over my time. And then I didn't do much with them once I was married. And of course, once I started having children, I really wanted to do something in that. If you remember Creative Memories being a company. So I got involved in that and started using their supplies and even eventually became a consultant. And so I did that for a few years and then decided to quit that and still was very much into paper scrapbooking until about 2003. And I sort of burned out on it. And then in 2005, I found digital scrapbooking, and I just fell in love. It was so fun because I've always enjoyed using a computer, and it was so much easier, as you know. No mess, no adhesives, and all those great things. And I just really enjoyed it. I taught myself. I found a Simple Scrapbooks magazine that was an older publication, and it was a special issue about digital scrapbooking. So I just poured over that and taught myself, and eventually got into using Photoshop. And I actually prefer Photoshop Elements. That's something that I always enjoy about you, that you also appreciate Photoshop Elements.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
I am too. It's just a great program, and it can do everything that you need to do, really. So yeah, I've been a digital scrapbooker since then, and I have to admit now I do a lot with the Project Life app on my iPad, because that's so easy. But I do still use Photoshop Elements and templates, and I do still do a lot with that. And I just love anything to do with photos and memories. That's just my favorite.
Yeah, and we certainly have that in common too.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking back, I wonder when, do you remember off the top of your head, Katie, what year did the Project Life app come out? I'm thinking...
I am thinking, seems like maybe 2015.
I was wondering 2015 or 16.
Yeah, I know. I should have looked at that, because I was thinking about that the other day too, thinking, wonder how long I've been doing this. This is a lot where you and I came to know each other, but I used to write for the Daily Digi when that was a regular site. And I remember doing, one of the first articles about Project Life. And of course, Steph, was instrumental in bringing that to digital scrapbookers. And
oh, yes.
So I just remember going through that evolution, and I remember being so excited when they had straight edge corners instead of just the rounded corners.
Yeah.
It's funny to think about now. Yeah.
Yeah. I just quickly looked it up. Project Life app came out September 2014.
Oh,
so, wow. It's longer. It's been around longer than I even thought. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I'm just thinking, I didn't start digital scrapbooking till about 2008, but it's like you almost had 10 years of digital scrapbooking on the computer, and then, and I mean, you could use apps on your phone before the Project Life app was about. I mean, there was apps that we were all using and stuff.
Were a few.
But the Project Life app just made it so much easier.
It does. There are still a few other apps I use occasionally. Have you used April?
I haven't.
It's a fun app. It's really fun for layouts. I think you'll love it. And, of course, sometimes I do some things in Over. That I use that more for maybe documenting on my cards that aren't in the Project Life app. So I'll do a lot of my journaling in Over. There are some other collage apps that I use occasionally. I use Diptych, I think is how you pronounce it. That's one I've used for a long time, I think even before the Project Life app came out.
Yeah, I definitely remember you talking about Diptych as like a pick of the week. I think it might have even been on like who knows? I think paper clipping days.
Yes, I think so. It was. In fact, I don't even use it much anymore because I use April quite a bit for that. I know a lot of people use the Rhonna apps for app scrapping, and I've done some fun things in them, but I don't use them a lot, not as much as I should. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's so many different tools. I've used Rhonna designs as well. I'm literally going to download and check out that April one because I love it. The name speaks to me because my birthday's in April, so I'm like, ooh, April.
Oh, nice. What's your birthday month?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, actually birthday in 2 days, so.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Thanks. Yeah, so there's a lot that, you've seen a lot of changes, and one thing I have really admired about you that you have been doing for many years is your memory roundup. And I always think, I'd love to do the memory roundup, but I never quite do it. I think I've done
Well,
one.
you can start at any time.
I can.
So yeah, that's something I started in 2006. So that was a long time ago. So I started blogging in 2005. I'd had a website before and kept trying to update it frequently. I kept trying to make it into a blog. I didn't know I was doing that at the time, but
I did the same. I had a website in 2002,
Yeah.
and I used to say
Yeah.
add a new page when I graduated from university, and then I added a new page when something else that I did, and I found a lost bird or something, and I added a page for that.
Isn't that funny? We were on the precursor to blogging there.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2006, in that January, I took this idea. I used to work for a food broker, and at the end of the month, we would always wrap up the month because, you'd want to know what the sales numbers were, make sure all the invoices were done. And so I kind of liked the idea of wrapping up a month, closing out the month is what we used to call it. And I started thinking of that from a memory keeping point of view, and I thought, it really is nice before you start the next month to close out the existing month and just sort of take inventory of everything that happened. Think about, what did we do this month? What did we celebrate? What I do little things like what shows did I watch? What books did I read? Because I'm finding that those little everyday activities give you a very good peek into what your life was like at that time. They're sort of like a time capsule. So I can go back and read my recap of the month back in September of 2006 or February of 2013, and I can know what we were doing during that month. And it's been incredibly helpful because I don't always keep up with my scrapbooking or photo books, everything. Sometimes I'm going back and working on pages much later, and so it's so helpful to be able to go through and read that. And I wish I had it for all the years. Like right now, I'm actually working on my daughter's baby book, and she is almost 22. So I'm pretty far behind on that. It was done in paper version, but I don't really like the way it was done. So I'm going back and doing it now with my new digital skills.
You can do that. I just love that, because you've got the photos scanned, I'm guessing.
I do.
Yeah, so you can just do that. Even though you've done it before, you can relive those moments. And
that's right. When I did it before, I just kind of slapped them in a book and stuck a few stickers in and called it done. And I didn't do a good job of telling the stories that went with the photos. So a lot of people say, oh, why are you redoing that? Just let it be. But for me, it's really important that those stories go with the photos because I want people to understand what was happening, especially her. That's the big thing. I want her to know her own story.
Yeah, that's so precious. I myself had Mum got a tiny little baby book type of thing that I assume it almost is like the size of a greeting card, but it's got lots of pages inside it. So it doesn't have photos or anything, but it just had, baby's first tooth was lost or what not lost, grew.
No, I know what you mean.
And she filled that out. So that was something I had. And then when we were older, leaving home, Mum actually wrote just like a 2 or 3 page Word document and printed it up for us.
Oh, that's a treasure.
Yeah, and she's written things like, she actually had written down like, who was my best friend in primary school. I mean, as it turned out, of course, I was one of those people who had the same friends, so I would have known who it was. But, some of those things you don't really know whether or not I would have remembered them, and she'd written them all down. And I was like, oh, this is so awesome, because I'd always had, like, the photo albums with just a date, really.
Yes.
And maybe, if they weren't family members, they'd write who they were on the back of the photo. But just so precious to have some of those memories from her, and because some of the things you as a young adult you just don't remember about your childhood or whatever.
And you don't know how meaningful it'll become to you later on. I mean, even as a young mother, just putting those photos in a a book, I mean, that was meaningful that I did that, but I wish I had taken the time to write down about what was going on. And the nice thing is I'm just trying to remember what I can. And I did write some things down. I did write down about some funny little experiences. And as I've gone through these paper pages, I'm reliving those, and that's fun too. So I can never emphasize enough how important journaling is. I know a lot of people say, well, I love that I can just put everything in a photo book, and I love photo books too, but I would encourage you to at least write down some details with that. And a lot of photo books have space to do that you can even do it right in their program. Of course, I do a lot of digital pages where I'm using either Photoshop Elements or the Project Life app or another app, and then I import those into a photo book program and put them all together. So you can do it either way, but just never forget how important the words are, because you can look at the photos and understand what's happening, but imagine if you were gone, or 20 years from now, if someone pulls out that book and you can't be over their shoulder to say, oh yeah, this is when we went here, and oh, this was so funny, and you can't give that commentary. That's the beauty of journaling, is that you always can.
Yeah, it's definitely so precious to have those things. And I've even noticed it myself. My eldest is only 9, or turning 9, but even being able to, I don't know, like when she was little, I posted lots of photos to Facebook because we were living far from family. But I didn't really write much on those on Facebook. And you know how Facebook shows you your memories of this day or whatever.
Yes.
And then I noticed as, I've got more into scrapbooking and memory keeping, like even my Facebook posts that pop up for the younger children and other year, like you see, or I'm writing more and more over the years.
That's
because
so great.
You just realize, these things, you don't remember every single thing. And as I've got back, but then it's still fun, and it's precious even now, like things that I'm even going back, only 9 years in scrapbooking. There's some things I can add to fill in those gaps.
That's true. I don't think it's ever too late.
No.
You can just add what you can remember at least.
Yeah.
And people are so lucky now with Instagram and Facebook. That is something that's great, as I know a lot of younger people are sharing their memories and writing about things because of that. But I would encourage them, hopefully, to put them into some sort of format that they can save. I mean, we don't know how long all those things will be around. So yes. I've even done those My Social books where they pull from your Facebook and Instagram feeds, because I don't want to have to go through and, copy everything out of those. But there's a lot that I've put on that I want to keep. So those are really fun too.
Yeah, they certainly are. And because I have done that whole thing of copying, I use a lot of Facebook journaling for pages, or to just prompt your memory
great.
As well. Yeah, it's definitely, we are blessed in that way. Everything is more, it may not be written down on paper, but in some ways it's stored on Facebook for now, at least, and we can go back and find it, whereas the back of the receipt we wrote on or whatever might be long gone.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and the good thing is that more people are enjoying those because you're sharing them, usually with family and friends, and where, if you just put it in a scrapbook and never show anyone, nobody gets to enjoy that. So there are some real benefits.
Yeah, and every time we have a cute Lego model and I post it up on Facebook, I'm like, on Instagram, I'm like, I'll tag Katie in it so she can see our fun, because I know you love Lego.
I know. I do. That's a fun passion for me and for my family. We enjoy those. So.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about, obviously you're still doing your memory roundup and you're using your Project Life app and also Photoshop Elements. So I was just wondering, I guess you've got your daughter's baby book on the on the
Well, I'm always working on a lot of projects at once. That's just something that I'm always doing, and I think that keeps me happy, so I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always working on the current year,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm always working on several past years. I have fully completed photo books for a couple of years, and my goal is I really would like to have those for every year. And I'm not necessarily going to have one album per year. When my kids were younger, I was using a film camera. I don't have that many photos.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have that many great photos either, but I'm making the best of what I have. And so their early years will be probably a couple of years combined into an album. I use Adorama Pix. I don't know if you've tried them.
Yeah.
I really love them. You can fit like over 100 pages in a photo book.
So are you
so
doing
I can really, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So you're doing your the layflat style of books?
I am.
Ah, and you can get 100 pages in them. Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I love it because, I don't like to have a lot of albums around for everything. I'm not one that I'll make an album for a trip or an album for this. I love people who do that. That's really fun and creative, but I just want them by year. And I used to do separate for travel, and I've just decided, my family was like, that's too confusing. We just want to sit down and look at all of our pages together. And I thought, you know what, they're right. So I just have them by year. And so I've got, I've still got to do 2015 and 16, and I do have 17 almost ready to print. So I'm kind of working on those, but I'm also going back and doing my kids' baby books. So it gets confusing at times, but I don't mind because you kind of sometimes will get bored working on the same project for a while. And so I can switch it up and enjoy that. And then this is kind of funny that I started getting into this, but I like digital mixed media and art journaling.
Yeah.
So sometimes, that's just fun to just play with the supplies and just do something creative. And I don't even necessarily use photos on those. So that's something that I enjoy as well, and I work on occasionally.
Oh, wow. So I was thinking then, because I know in the past, this is one of those moments where you're like, what is she going to bring up that I've said in the last 100 podcasts I've been on? You used to, if I recall correctly, I'm thinking you used to have print your layouts like 8x8 and actually put them in albums. Was that?
I did.
And so what?
Yes. Yeah, you have a good memory.
So what are you doing? I'm assuming you'll just have them for the time being because like you said, you haven't finalized each year's album for a photo
That's right.
book.
Yeah, some of them I just took them out of the albums and stacked them in a drawer for right now. I had these inexpensive albums I had bought that were on clearance, and for a long time I would just print out my layouts and put them in there. And that was when your only choice was 8x8 or 12x12, and for me 12x12 was too big.
Yeah.
But with my Adorama Pix albums, and I know you can even do this with single pages now too, I really love the 10x10 size. For me, that's just the right size. I feel like, you don't have to worry about your journaling being too small. You can fit a lot on the page and it feels comfortable to look at. So I use that size now, and I really enjoy that size. That's my favorite. And so, I have little bits. I have this closet where I have paper layouts and some old digital layouts and boxes of photos, and it's not all wonderful and organized. I wish it was, but I'm working on it. It's going to be a lifetime project, I guess.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm sitting in my study right now, and behind me is a cupboard, and there's 2 shelves of memorabilia from I would say the last 10 years, but it's not even that. And I'm constantly going through it anytime that I have it. Like we've just done the Calvin Ball challenge with Get It Scrapped. And I've pulled out years, and I've been throwing stuff away because, I keep too much. I look back and I say,
and it's okay to throw it away eventually too.
Yeah.
Take a picture of it and then throw it out.
And, you kind of I don't know, over time you decide what's important or what, has most value to you that
Yes.
you want to keep. And yeah, I love the idea of 10 by 10. I've always been printing at 8 by 8 at the moment, just because I haven't been investing in like nice layflat. I'm just doing more snapfish or whatever, printed. But I do
Well, and
definitely
I've always
love.
liked the 8 by 8 because it fits nicely on a bookcase. So,
Yeah, and I've really loved it as well because having small children, they can look at them, and if, firstly, they can actually pick them up and hold them.
yes.
But it's not too expensive if I need to replace things.
Mhm.
And yeah, because I love to have the freedom to let them look at the books whenever they like. Because I know growing up, I always used to wish, I wish, I'd ask if I could look at my photos. And sometimes that was good, but other times it was like, no, not right now kind of thing. Because, can you trust a 6-year-old to not decide that they want to pull each photo out of the album, look at it with their greasy hands and put it back in?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that is a concern for some people with photo books. These Adorama ones are nice because they've got a nice coating on them, but I can understand what you're saying with small children. And when my kids were little, well, they weren't so little when I was doing the 8 by 8, but it was easy for them to just pull them out and look at them. And the nice thing is when you do a photo book, you do have to be willing to say, this is our complete entry for this year, or for whatever time period you're doing the photo book. If you forget a page, it's awfully hard to go back and add it in. So there are some nice benefits to doing a loose leaf scrapbook, and you can add it or take away at any time. So
yeah,
definitely benefits both ways.
there is. And I have tried one of those beautiful Adorama lay flat books. It was a couple of years ago now. I think I ended up doing an all about me kind of album because I was like, what can I put in an album that's not, just a random collection of pages, because I had a really good deal. And I was like, oh, and I really do enjoy them. And as you say, they are super sturdy. I think that they're obviously more costly than your Snapfish books, but their quality is there. And because they're proper photo prints, you can just, wipe.
Yeah, they do a nice job. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they're really lovely.
But there are so many good ways to print up now. I mean, I know a lot of people like the chapbooks, and I haven't done any, but I've seen some, and those are really fun, and they're just some great ways to do it.
There's certainly so many options, and I think that's great in a way, but also you have to not be frozen and think, oh, well, I don't want to, because you've been there yourself. You changed over the years, and
I know, and you can overthink it and get overwhelmed for sure.
Yeah. So, I guess one other thing we haven't mentioned that you're doing these days is you've got your store at your website, and you're designing products over there. So, do you want to just tell?
I am. I've been enjoying that. Yeah. So I've gone back and forth on designing. I started designing back in 2007, and I wasn't very good. I'll just tell you that. But, you have to start somewhere. And so I did start that and did that for a few years, and then decided, well, I'm just going to focus on writing and teaching. That's really where I like to be. And I got involved with the Daily Digi and did that. And then just the more I used supplies and products, I really got into template designing for a while, because I was pretty much making up my own templates when I would create pages. And so that was something that I enjoyed for quite a while. Well, templates are not as popular now that people are using apps. There are still people who use them a lot, but it is a lot different now than it used to be. It used to be everyone used templates. But so I've kind of gone back and forth. Well, do I want to get back into designing supplies? And I dabbled a little bit with it last year. And as I started that this year, I thought, I kind of need to decide, am I doing this or not? And I decided this year I'm going to focus on trying to have monthly releases and really focus on pocket card designs, because that's what I'm using right now. I'm using a lot of supplies for pocket pages, which, isn't just Project Life. It's that style of scrapbooking where you have, the different squares and rectangles. And I also have enjoyed turning some of those pieces into printable art type pieces. A lot of people like to print out things for a gallery wall or for holiday displays. And so some of those quotes or fun pieces that work well for a certain time of year, I've made those into bigger printables like 8 by 10 and 11 by 14. And so somebody can download those. There's a lot of those kind of things on Etsy too. But so that's been a fun thing to do as well. Just something that I've been interested in and had fun with, and that my customers seem to enjoy too. So that's been really fun, and it just keeps me going creatively, and I guess it keeps the wheels turning.
So are you still using Photoshop Elements to do your design work then?
I do actually do a lot of my design work in Photoshop Elements. I also do have Photoshop on my computer, because there's some things, if you want to do some certain text effects or things that you really, if more design work, you can use in Photoshop. But I would say probably about 90% of what I do is in Photoshop Elements. I just prefer it. It's so easy to use.
Yeah, I'm much the same way. I have both on my computer, but it's a rare day that not being a designer myself, it's a rare day that I pull open Photoshop CC.
Yes.
Yeah, because they do have a lot of great features. And if you know what you're doing, you've been using the software for many, many years, it's good to use what you're used to.
That's right. I think, unless you're a designer, I think Photoshop Elements is more than enough, to tell you the truth. I think they are making it closer and closer to what Photoshop is with each update each year, and it's a great program. But I started out in something called Microsoft Digital Image Pro. I don't know if you'd ever even heard of that, but there were no layers or anything, and that's what I started learning in. And I remember I was so scared to switch to anything Photoshop related. I was so scared of layers.
Oh, yeah. It's a little, and it's funny because even to this day, that's one of the most asked questions that I have is about layers. And I no matter how many tutorials I do, there's always more to be asked.
It is a little bit challenging for people at first, but now if I ever have a program that doesn't have layers, I feel bad. I want layers. If you're working in like Microsoft Word, you think, I wish I could just move through my layers stack.
Oh, yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I used to use Microsoft Publisher back in the day. I used to do a lot of graphic design in there. And you'd always be like, send to back.
I know.
Trying to, which thing is on top of which? And yes, it's good to have that visual, that visual reference right there on the right side of the screen, and you can see where things are and how they're stacking up.
I do love that. Yeah.
One other thing I teasingly put in my show notes is why you switched to the dark side, because many of listeners who've heard you over the years would have known that you were a Windows girl, but now the last how many years? A couple of years is it? You switched.
About 18 months ago, I went to Mac, and I never thought I would. So it is kind of a funny story because I've always used Windows, always been a PC girl. And for a long time, my husband kept saying he wanted to get a Mac. And I said, you don't want to do that. You don't have to relearn everything. And, they're not that much better anyway. I would talk him out of it. And for him, it would be hard for him to use a Mac because of his workplace. They're all on PCs. But so I talked him out of it. And I don't know if I just got a couple of bad laptops, but I went through several laptops within a couple of years and kept having, they were just really were lemons. And I got tired of replacing laptop after laptop. So I thought, all right, everyone says Macs last longer. I knew they still had problems. Seen plenty of designer friends post, oh, my Mac crashed and it's in the shop. And so I wasn't buying into the hype that they're perfect. I knew they weren't. But I decided, well, maybe instead of buying 3 more PCs, I'll buy a Mac because, they're a lot more expensive too.
Yeah.
So I decided to give it a try because I think what finally convinced me is I thought I'm doing so much on my iPad Pro already.
Yeah.
That's something that I use a lot for scrapbooking. I love it because I have the big one, and I just love it when I'm using apps to scrap because I just feel like it's easy for me to see. It's just, I love the big screen. But for some people, I would understand it's too big. And I have a little very thin keyboard that I attach to it. So a lot of times I'm using that almost like a MacBook. And I thought, you know what, I could probably make the switch because of this. And so I did get a MacBook, and I still try to hit the control key all the time. I mean, those things are ingrained in you after decades.
Yes.
So I still struggle to remember to hit the command key and not the control key. But other than that, I feel like I've adjusted really well. And I do like it for the way it syncs so easily with what I'm doing on my iPad. And I do feel, I don't know, some satisfaction that I'm all Apple now, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, because you've always had your iPhone. You've been.
I did.
You've been iPhone for so many years. So.
Since they came out, I've loved iPhones. I've loved iPads, but I was always hesitant to go with a Mac, and I didn't have any problems at first, and then I had like a bad motherboard, and so I had to go into the Genius bar, which I don't love. I will admit, I don't love going to the Apple store, and it makes me feel nervous. There's no lines. It's like feels very chaotic to me. Our Apple store that's by me is really crowded all the time, and so I just don't love it. But I went in and they took care of me really well. They replaced it for free because it was a new Mac, and I haven't had one other problem until about a month ago. And it's funny because I was just sitting around feeling a little smug with myself, thinking, well, I've really adapted well to this Mac. and then I opened it up one day and the screen was red. Well, I was very familiar with the blue screen of death, but I had never heard of having a red screen.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either.
Well, and when I posted about it on social media, a lot of Mac users were like, oh, I've never seen that. I'm like, well, that can't be good. So it was a rare thing, but someone on social media was actually, Shari of Persnickety Prince, she was able to talk me through how to bypass it and restart it, and then I haven't had a problem since. So I don't know. Every computer has pros and cons. I don't think that, anyone who thinks, I have to have a Mac because it'll be perfect. I don't think that's an accurate thought, but they are fun. They're very pretty and they run very well, but so do PCs now. There's so many great PCs that I don't think there's a lot of difference between them anymore, honestly. And I probably get hate mail from both sides.
Yeah, well, I mean,
there's a lot of good machines out there. I do love this Mac. I probably will always stay with a Mac now because I do really love it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done both. I used to use Macs for my graphic design work. Well, not with Microsoft Publisher. Other graphic design work I've done. And so I used to do the same thing at work. I kind of gave myself such a sore hand because my method of teaching myself the keyboard shortcuts was, do you remember, I don't know if you remember, the round iMac mice that they brought out? You may not know because...
I probably don't because I didn't really follow Macs in the past.
So this is back in about 99, 2000. They had these mice, and I worked for the education department at the time, and there were these round mice, and they made these things called mouse catchers that you would put on your round mouse to make it more normally shaped, so it was more ergonomic.
Oh.
Anyway, so because the Mac mouse only had one button, I was like, okay, to help myself remember, I'm going to use the Mac mouse in my left hand. I'm left-handed. Just for anyone who's listening and thinking this is a weird thing to do. So I'm using my Mac mouse in my left hand, and so I'm using my keyboard shortcuts like the control key with my right hand over on the left side.
Wow.
And I was doing this. So anyway, so I did that while I was working in that job, and I'd come home and use my PC at night around the other way. But yeah, then my grandparents, my in-laws got given a Mac by their son, except he's not really a Mac person. So yes. I was the designated troubleshooter. So I've had the advantage of being able to use both. And, you know, honestly, the biggest thing for me is what you said with the keyboard shortcuts, because
it's so silly.
You're ingrained in it from using them for so many years. So
that's been the hardest thing for me. I keep trying to reach for Control-Alt-Delete or the Control key, and this is different. It's a silly little problem.
Oh yeah,
but and I don't like the Apple mouse. I have to admit, I use a different mouse. I just can't get used to that. So.
Yes, I'm funny because I haven't used a mouse for so many years. I've been using a Wacom tablet, I think, for almost 10 years. And then recently my Wacom died and I started using a mouse again. I got a new tablet, but there's something different about it. The angle of the way, like it's slightly angled, and it's a slightly different texture, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I got used to this one thing for 10 years and now I've got a new tablet to get used to.
It is hard to switch, isn't it?
Oh, so funny. But now I'm just hoping my PC hangs in for a few more years, because it's technology. You do get used to what you're using, and there's always that little bit, as much as it's fun to have the latest and greatest and the best and the most up to date, there's always that little bit of just a learning curve, a little bit of an adjustment.
And setting everything up again, and it's just once you find something that works really well for you, you're just like, oh, hang in there for a while.
Yeah, that's right, for sure. Oh, well, it's been so fun to chat with you, Katie. I've missed hearing you in my earbuds in the last little while. Oh, I
appreciate that. It's been fun to visit with you too.
Yeah. Well, so I just wanted to encourage all the listeners, if you're not following Katie's blog, you really should. I really love all the creative ideas, and I also love your fun, like your meme posts that you do, or there's always something that's creative, inspiring, or a little bit of fun humor every now and then. I guess.
Yeah, I think we all need some of that, honestly.
Yeah, so you can check out Katie at katiethecreativelady.com, and she has a blog there and her shop and all kinds of fun things and many years of archives.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks so much for joining me today, Katie. And I hope we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much to Katie for joining me for today's episode of the Scrapbooking Inspiration Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our chat, and if you'd like to learn more about anything we've been talking about, including that round Apple mouse, I've got it all in the show notes at scrapbookingpodcast.com/72. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast. and I'll see you in the next episode.